Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Now this video will showcase the city I created for Paradox Interactive, the official trailer and marketing for the pack. Now this city was a completely vanilla build. It was completed in about 5 days. And even as a vanilla build, I'm really happy with the quality. So I'm really excited to show you the final city. But it is quite nice for once not to do a really heavily modded build, but to try and work within the vanilla gameplay. I'm not going to show you everything, I'm going to kind of speedrun us through the footage, and then I'll finish off with a live play and just show you around the entire city. At the end of the video, I'm also going to introduce you to the next community challenge we'll be hosting on my Discord. So this is a build competition, and the build will be featured on this save. So I've uploaded this save today to Paradox Mods. So without further ado, let's get into today's build as we build out the city for the UK region pack. I did actually have a couple of days with the city before I got the UK assets, so that when I get the UK assets, all I need to do is kind of focus on the design and aesthetic of the build. I'm going to completely delete and renovate almost the entire thing over this episode. So yeah, let's get started, and I actually start off with this residential zone just on the outskirts of the city, and I think this is going to be a nice starting point. This is mostly going to be low density detached properties. So the original thought is I could just zone out the city, but it was actually really hard to get the building to zone which I wanted it to. So in the end, I do resort to plop in all of these buildings. But I don't have mods, so dev mode is going to have to do. And with dev mode, we don't have thumbnails, so I'm just using the list. But I did find actually the list wasn't too bad, because once I got to know which number was which building, it actually made it very easy to find the one I wanted. Along the backside here, I'm going to add in the doctor's surgery and a few semi-detached houses as well. I think in the middle of this park we can also add in our first signature building, which is one of the pubs. Pub is just so perfect for this location. It's really got that kind of more suburbs feel to it. This pub is actually one I know from Cardiff, so it is very strange seeing it in the game. And all of this park is just going to be very light on detailing. Of course we are playing vanillas, so there's only so much detailing possible. Trees are our best friend in this kind of scenario, because they really add so much to the build. Just a few pedestrian paths and some benches and trash bins, and that's all really the detailing we can kind of get into in this video. So as we move into the next kind of residential area, we're going to start transitioning these detached and semi-detached properties into more terraced homes. You often find with these terraced houses, they're all very tight and congested, with kind of gardens backing onto each other. But I think these kind of row homes, mixed in with a few detached and semi-detached properties, just help that transition into the more inner city urban areas. So on this roundabout here, of course roundabouts are very iconic to the UK. We all know the UK loves a good roundabout. And I think this will work really well on the corner here. I can give it just a very lightly detailed beer garden just to kind of fill up this space. That works pretty well. And then across the road from the pub, we can add in the cemetery. And like I said in the previous video, I'm so glad to now have churches in the game. This is just so great to see. As we are transitioning into more downtown areas, I think we start to integrate a bit more of the mixed-use commercial and residential buildings. And a few more terraced houses just away from the roundabout, just to kind of complete this scene. So on the far side here, I can turn this into like a new build estate. These kind of detached properties and semi-detached properties, I'm going to try and pick the ones more with like a red brick style, as I think that's more common in one of these new build estates. So I'm just plopping down the buildings first, and then the road layout is just being formed from the buildings I plop. That worked really well in this kind of scenario. And you know, at the end of this estate, this is going to be a great spot for like a golf course. This is very much underdeveloped for now. I will come back to this in a future episode. And you know, I'll just keep the detailing very light, but you know, even within a vanilla game, there's a bit of stuff I can do. You know, add some nice bushes and hedges. I add in a mock driving range and a putting green. Just add a bit of basic detailing for the driving range we are using these garden sheds. And I'm also going to add in a few more skills, so I'll add in 2 primary skills with the suburban and urban primary skills, and the high school. I find with a lot of these skills, quite often we'll have all these housing estates backing onto them, so I'm just going to add in a lot of the terraced home and detached homes leading onto the backs of these. And yeah, we can do a bit of basic detailing around them too, and with the urban primary skill, I'm going to add in a little playing field just onto the side of the school, so I can use the grass surfaces and some of McMelchman's walls as well. So unfortunately I am playing without mods, so that means I don't have the line tool, so I'm actually having to plop a lot of these just one at a time. And in the middle of this area we have a nice park, so I'm going to add in a bunch of pedestrian paths and some basic foliage and a few flower beds. And a few grass surfaces and hedges as well. It's looking quite nice, especially for vanilla build. To move in more then onto the more inner downtown areas. So you can see I'm just plopping down quite a few signatures, just trying to see which buildings kind of work well. And then on this high street here, for the most part, you know, it looks really nice. I really like how I've got the 2 pubs on either side of the road, and then wall-to-wall mixed use kind of just off them. This works really well for kind of high street. There's a bit of basic detail work I can do in and around the main high street. For example, outside the Heath pub here, we just add some more tables and like a beer garden, a few more food stalls and shop racks and stuff like that. You're not really going to see much detached or semi-detached properties in this area. There will be mostly terraced homes and then a lot more of the medium and high density as we head more into the downtown areas. There is a lot of repetition, I would say, with a lot of this footage. You know, a lot of it is just me going into dev mode. It's me finding the buildings I need, plopping them down, making sure it conforms to the zoning. And just off this industrial area here, I think it's a good place for a council estate. We're going to use these high density residential buildings. You'll find with a lot of these, they won't necessarily be wall to wall. I am just kind of leaving quite a bit of gaps for some pedestrian paths. You know, the city would also benefit, I think, from a beach or just something of interest at the front. You know, I'm really not putting any detail into this at all. Just using the vanilla surfaces of pedestrian paths and foliage. And off to the side, we can also have a bit of a marina too. So I will just use pedestrian paths to create this marina. It's all very simple. Not far from the marina as well, we've also got this Ferris wheel. And off of this, I will create kind of like the city park. We also have this suburb here on the outside of town, which I quite like. I'm just building it out, and I think I'm going to do a little church and cemetery at the top of this hill. And this graveyard will overlook the town as well. It's quite nice that all of these tombstones are provided in the vanilla game. So, you know, that's one thing we can do vanilla, is add all these custom cemeteries. And also on the outskirts of town, I think it'd be nice to frame the city with a few farms. So I'm going to use just some basic detailing here and just use the vanilla surfaces to create different farm colours. And a bit of foliage and houses scattered around. And yeah, that'll just give us a really nice backdrop to the city. I think this is quite an interesting location actually. So on the outskirts of town, you know, we would get a lot of these kind of council estates, and this is the high density and medium density buildings. You can see these are on like a raised level, so a bit more higher up than the main town. I think that's quite nice. So I just add in a whole bunch of these high density and medium density buildings. You know, a couple of trees all dotted around. That's a nice little council estate there, I think. And having it so close to the motorway too. Across the motorway, I'm going to place this Morrissey's. You know, it's common, you'd get a lot of these on the outskirts of town. And very simple detailing, we're just going to add in some car parks and a petrol station. I also really like the position of this college. It's such a nice place for it to be. So as we've kind of just ran through this so quickly, and I've just given you a kind of flavour for the build, I think it will be nice to do a city showcase and just show you around as part of a live play to finish off the episode. I'll leave you now with the last few bits of footage of me building up the city, and we'll return with a live play. Okay, so welcome to the live play portion of today's video. And we're here with the final city now. How good does all of this look? Especially in the rain, which is very British. I often play, you know, on sunny weather. It's just quite nice actually playing with a bit of rain for once. Just helps give it, you know, a nice bit of atmosphere. You know, it still amazes me that this is a vanilla build, of course using the UK pack as well. But for the most part, you know, playing without mods, it is amazing that this is now possible. Especially considering the build only took about 5 days or so. So, you know, not so much time, especially to create an entire city. I'm really happy, you know, with how it all came out. Let's show you around. So this is the first residential neighbourhood I built. It is mostly low density residential. It came out really good, and it's got this really nice park in the middle with the Motherboard pub here on the corner. I think this pub is just such the right vibe for this kind of area. Got a little playground there as well, and of course just some basic detailing in and around the park. On this side of the residential neighbourhood, we have a lot of these fields, and these fields are filled with sheep. And this was all on Rafterman's original map. But you know, it's really nice just to kind of work around these kind of areas full of sheep. Really helps like add to the vibe and helps frame the city pretty well. On either side of the motorway, we do have kind of residential neighbourhoods and streets which just kind of tail off leading out of town. But as we head towards the more city centre, you'll see the kind of detached houses and semi-detached transition into more terraced housing, which would be more common in inner city areas. And with all of this terraced housing, it's always on quite tight roads as well, so all the gardens will kind of back onto each other. I think it works really well, and that transition looks nice and natural. We also have the first school in the city here. This is the more suburban school. I think it looks quite nice, the fact that all these residential homes are like backing onto the school and they're kind of enclosing it in a residential neighbourhood. And we have another school here, and this is the more inner city school. This is headed more towards the downtown. I think the more urban primary school really fits in here. They've done a little kind of kids playground off to the side and just very basic detailing around that. How nice does that look with the fields in the background too? I think this house here would be where the farmer would live, the person who's tended to all of these fields of sheep. I think that's really nice there. That's such a perfect property. More terraced housing on this side, and this takes us to, I'd say, quite like a main roundabout in the city, even though it is pretty quiet right now. But I really try to make sure this roundabout really fit in with the UK theme, and I thought this would be a good thumbnail, which I think I used on the previous video. Of course, we have the Heath pub here on the corner. It's a shame that the Brian's or Brains Brewery did get removed from this in the end. But yeah, this is a pub I visited, as I mentioned in the last video. Drank in this pub many times. It's really surreal just to see it in City Skylines 2. And also on this roundabout, I do have the church asset with a cemetery, which really feels quite UK. Across the road, a bit of commercial and the petrol station, and a bit more commercial as we head on out of town. Now on this side of the road, I kind of see this being like quite like a new build estate. So imagine like a property developer would buy a big chunk of land, they develop a whole bunch of houses and then sell them off. That's what I imagine with this residential neighbourhood. And I haven't left much space here, so you can see all of the gardens all backing onto each other. It's all very tight and congested here. The property developers trying to make as much room off the land as possible. It looks so good with all these different houses. You know, the guys did such a great job on all of these assets. And just at the end of this neighbourhood, it's what I've done as like the golf course. So, you know, I am playing this on the rebuilt version of the save. So I haven't actually got the golf courses there anymore. But that is something I'm going to come back to in a future episode and do this golf course properly. But in the meantime, you know, I think this hotel asset does work really well here. There quite likely is a space for a driving range here. We've got a putting green as well. It's all very simply done, but I think it does carry off the effect. And then we have like a ring road going around the city, which I think is quite nice. You know, this would be common in the UK as well, to have like a ring road so you don't have to go right through the centre of town each time. On this end of town, we do have mostly industrial. We do have a few suburbs here on the outskirts of town too. I thought it was quite nice that this one has like a cemetery on the top, and the cemetery will overlook the city. I think that's quite nice. Of course, a football field is another big thing in the UK. It's not a UK build unless you've got football fields there. So I think this asset works really well. Also have a bus station here. Make sure that, you know, the city is functional. So we do have train services and boat services, bus services, taxis. You know, we have all of the things. So even though, you know, I'm not normally one to get too hung up on the functionality of the city, I do think it's nice to make sure that, you know, we do have all of the transport all built up. Right next to the industrial zone, I see this more or less like a council estate, so this is mostly high density and medium density buildings. And these council homes, you know, you often would find them quite near to industrial zones as well. Another school and a bit of tennis courts here. And over here we do have the larger secondary school, which is such a great asset. Like I mentioned in the previous video, this is one of my favourite assets, I think, and I think it's just the footprint of it as well. Ring Road also has a lot more of the medium density and high density buildings. Bit commercial there as well, and a petrol station. These two blocks here, I would say, it's probably the more commercial area of the town. I imagine this road here is the main high street. It's mostly wall-to-wall, mixed-use, residential and commercial down here. I love how busy it is as well, actually. God, there's so many people around, which is great. Lots and lots of commercial, mixed-use all the way down. And then on this junction here, we actually have two pubs. We have the Church Inn and the Heath. It's quite common in the UK. You would see a lot of pubs in very close proximity. Perhaps people could go on a bit of a pub crawl. And it's mostly the same as we finish up the main commercial high street. That works really well, I think. Also like how there's pedestrian paths off either side of it as well. And all down here, this is all pedestrian only. Works really well. And then we have, of course, we do have a beach, and this is very simply detailed. You know, I really haven't put any time into this at all. Just a quick pedestrian path and the kind of sand vanilla surfaces. But it'll do the job just to frame the city for now, until we can further develop it in a future episode. Then as we head on into the main, I guess, downtown area of the build, I'd say, you know, a lot of UK cities, we don't really have what I would consider a downtown in the UK. You know, it's quite often you do get the high rises in more kind of out of town areas like this. You know, it's always quite a small area, I'd say, for high rise. You know, it's not common in the UK to get cities anywhere on the scale of something like New York, where every building is a skyscraper. It's just not a thing over here. But you know, with these downtowns, especially because of the UK assets, all kind of, you know, a similar look, it's important to make sure that there's quite a few signature buildings, just to add a bit more diversity. So we can see we've got the Marvellous Marble, the Kona Park, Capacitor Building, the Polaris Suites, and the De Lucina apartments. So, you know, a lot of signatures will just help give us that diversity we're looking for. But all of these kind of medium and high-rise density UK assets are also good. Really help fill in the gaps in between the larger ones. I think this one, yeah, this is a high-rise office building just to make sure the city is functioning well. And that's the largest skyscraper in the city. We also have the hospital, which is just such a beautiful asset. And I've framed this with two parks as well, just to add a bit more recreational grounds around the hospital. And like I said, over here we do have more of a council estate with a lot of high rises, you know, kind of away from the city centre. This is quite common with a lot of council estates you'd find. And that looks really good. You know, it's very simple, just a bunch of trees in between the medium and high density buildings. But I think that's all it needs. You know, it looks really good from back here. Across the motorway, we do have the Morrissey's supermarket, which is the Morrison's parody. This would be quite common in the UK. You'd find a lot of these supermarkets like Tesco's and Morrison's quite near to a main high street or motorway. A lot of these commercial units for places like Morrissey's, they would normally always have a petrol station as part of it, so you can fill up fuel while you get your shopping. They did extend it with just a few more car parking spaces around the side. So I think that's working really well, and I really like the position of it. Across the road from that, we do have what I consider like a brewery. Maybe, you know, we can say this is the Brian's Brewery. But, you know, this is all industrial props which are available, even in the vanilla game. And, you know, just a few barrels just to kind of give it that brewery vibe which we're looking for. I think that works really well. You know, I would like to develop this in the future, actually turn it into an official Brian's Brewery or something like that. We do have a nice park at the front of the city with a Ferris wheel. I think this Ferris wheel is probably a bit bigger than what I would have liked to have. There's some nice parks here, which I've just kind of extended from pathways used on the Ferris wheel. I think that works quite well. This is a temporary placement for where the marina will go. I did include this on the original builds, but when I rebuilt the city, I didn't bother including this the second time. But you know, we will come back in future and flesh out that marina more. A nice harbour here next to us as well. And along this area, it is mostly just terraced houses leading into the more medium and high density building. I really like, you know, how all of these back gardens are just right up against that railway line. That feels very UK to me. So on this side of town, it's mostly the same, a lot more residential. We have more terraced homes, more closer to the city centre. And then as we get further away from town, we do go more into more detached and semi-detached properties. Along this front street here, we do have a bit more commercial. It's all quite simple here. And then as we fade off into town, we have more of the larger detached properties. We do have a bit of a hill here as well. A lot of these more council estate type areas, you often find them, you know, spread in and amongst more low density residential. So here I've placed them at the bottom of the hill, a couple of medium and high density buildings. And then as we go up the hill, we'd have more of the detached and semi-detached properties. And you can see we would have like a really nice view from up here too. I think that works really well. I'm excited to do more, you know, in the hills with more challenging terrain. You know, LA is so flat. Quite nice that to do this build working with more terrain and height differences. Also on top of this hill, I've put the college. Now I think this is a great location for the college. Of course, we're going to have fantastic views. You can imagine a lot of students sitting out here in this park, having their lunches. And you can see it sticking out on the hill from all different parts of town. Just got that university poking out up on the hill, which I think works really well. Then as we go out of town, we do have a very quick and very lightly detailed industrial zone, just using a bit of surfaces. Of course, we do have the port, the cargo harbour, the post sorting facility, and a couple of signature buildings, which all work really well, and the cargo train yard over here. And even just a lot of these empty surfaces, it just helps bring it all together and make it feel a lot more like an industrial zone. Over here is mostly the same, a bit more industrial. We have the ore production, some more services here, and farms over the far side. I think in this corner there were a few more farms as well. This is so underdeveloped, but I really want to come back here and do something quite nice, because I think it's a lovely location with the city in the background too. But this is mainly just to provide, you know, a bit more life around the farms, just as a temporary placeholder. Up on the cliff here, we do have our power. This is the geothermal power plant, the recycling plant, and a bit of industrial. So yeah, I think that's mostly it. That was just a quick flyover to show you around so you can see the entire city. And the final build is so cool. I'm really happy with how it all came out. Especially considering this was created in just 5 days or so, and totally vanilla too. It was a pleasure to build this city and to be commissioned by Paradox to be able to show off my friend Mac Welshman's assets to you. To see all of the community's response has been pretty awesome over the last week too. Everyone seems so happy with the quality of the assets, the variety, all of the props, and all of the cool details we shared in the last video. So if you haven't watched my showcase with Mac, where he goes through all of his thoughts and design decisions on the assets, please go and watch that. So I do plan on continuing on with this save, so this will become a brand new series on the channel, so I'm really excited to kick that off. So this series is going to be called The Shires, and this is a reference to English counties, and how many counties have shires in the name. So a county would be, like this entire region, quite similar to, I guess, what Americans would call a state. It's going to be great. We'll be able to take inspiration from many rural locations in the UK. I like to see this series also having quite a lot of Welsh influence too. And I think it's nice that right from episode 1, we're going to have our largest city mostly built out, and I can focus on the more rural builds. You know, that is the whole reason I'm starting this series. It's going to allow me to, build in nature, something which LA doesn't do. And even though a lot of this series will be out in nature, I do want to work on the city too, because it is quite simple at the moment, and I know we could do so much of a better job with a bit more time and more mods. So like I said earlier in the video, the save game is available right now on PDX mods, so please go and check that out. The save game is also going to be the subject of a new community detailing challenge we're hosting on my Discord from today. So the challenge will be featured and winner announced on episode 1 of my brand new series, The Shires. So I will use the save game from the winning build to continue on with my series, so their build will be forever on my map right from episode 1. Now for the challenge, I do want to embrace the kind of nature theme and rural UK setting which I'm taking for this series, and of course, feature the UK region pack assets. So I've picked out 4 locations: coastal, moorlands, plains, and valleys. And you can build on any one of these 4 locations, so we should get quite a bit of variety in the build submissions. And this is going to be quite challenging, I think. Of course, got very different terrain elevations, so it'll be interesting to see what people do. There's a lot of places in nature, rural parts of the UK, which you can be inspired by for this. And this is another reason why I chose to build on Rafterman's map, because it is just so beautiful. So there's 4 locations there for you to choose from, all of which I think have slightly different challenges. So if you are interested in taking part, you could find out more information on my Discord. I'll leave the link down below in the description. And I'm giving people, quite a few weeks to do their builds, so hopefully plenty of time to get involved. So yeah, that's mostly it. I hope you enjoyed seeing the city I did for the UK region pack. So next up on the channel, now I know I said I wasn't going to be working on LA for quite a while, but the next video up on the channel is actually going to be LA episode 5. So as you all know now, the CCPs have just been released, and I think some of these assets are absolutely perfect for the next build I want to do in LA. I've also finished my French build, and honestly, this is an absolute monster, so I can't wait to show you that. And it's been a great year on the channel, so I'm looking forward to, in this final month of the year, putting a bit more content out for you all. So that's it for me. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll catch you all again in the next video.